say the DNA is only ever off by 2%, that they're still calling these people aliens. It is very clear to me that this show is remarkably close to real events. If you look at the main bad guy character named Dempsey, he looks exactly like David Rockefeller. The same droopy eyelids and all this weird stuff. He seems to be using some sort of energy-stealing technology. He's abducting children. The children are being given these injections, and then their life force is draining. They look like old women when they're little kids. It happens to this bad guy. He gets injected, and it kills him. He turns into an old man. Somehow, Dempsey is soaking up people's life force to keep him looking younger. That's why in episode 8, you see him standing in front of the mirror, and his face suddenly shapeshifts to look younger. He probably is an ET. This is probably something that he's using as a rival to the other group. It was also very fascinating in the 10th episode, which came out 20 days after the alleged missile launch off Los Angeles coast, that you have what appears to be very, very hasty, sloppy computer graphics of a missile launch in the program, including stock footage of a missile flying that's not even anything they created. It was just from a military stock footage. And it seems that they worked that in the last minute, and what it's doing is it's saying that the bad ETs are now calling out to their allies in outer space, and they're bringing the war home to the Earth's surface. So you got Dempsey that represents one group, you got the bad faction, the ETs, and what they're saying is the bad ETs are going to come in here and they want to terraform the Earth and make it more comfortable for them to live here. That's exactly what the spin version of China's October Surprise, which is being talked about by the Nexus editor Duncan Rhodes, being talked about by other people. Fulford got a version of that story too, that some of these ETs, what they're being told is, oh, well, they want to come here and they want to terraform the Earth so that we won't be able to live here, but they will. Well, that's exactly what's happening in The Event. So I think shows like The Event and shows like V are being held off the script to the last minute so they can rewrite the script based around real events. I saw that in V very clearly when they brought in an obvious analogy to the swine flu vaccine conspiracy that's going on. So I think that's part of what's going on. It is a disclosure vehicle, and it is utterly fascinating. The Event, that show, is the most fascinating, bold statement, the movement towards disclosure we've ever seen, and it personally involves all of us because of how closely it ties in with what we said last year from Peterson about Obama making an announcement and introducing us to humans who were not born on Earth.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Good statement there. Okay. Sorry about this crazy thing. Okay, Hoagland. Richard Hoagland, you are unmuted at this moment, I believe, so you can address this question regarding the event as well. I guess, I don't know if he stepped away. I've got him unmuted. I'm not sure what's going on with that or whether he has. Oh, okay, great. Yes, now I can hear you. So, Richard, you are asked to comment on the television show, The Event.
Well, I totally agree with David that The Event is basically an effort, as if you go back to the Nixon administration, you could go to the senior advisors around Nixon. He had a guy named Haldeman, and during Watergate, it was Haldeman who was recommending, as opposed to Ehrlichman, who was another one of Nixon's advisors, what he called the limited hangout route. I see The Event, the NBC television show with the backwards Z, which mathematically simply says this exists, that The Event is a spun version of how disclosure either was supposed to take place at the White House level or could in fact still take place at the White House level if there is certain foundation laid. And because everybody is watching television, what we've been doing on our Facebook pages is we've been doing on Monday nights after the TV series aired, we've been having an open thread where people would basically present their decodings, their thoughts, their linking of dots. I mean, there's an extraordinary database of people who've been looking at the show now on our Facebook pages, and then they've gone over to the various event blogs that are on the internet, which the network has sponsored and other people have sponsored, and they've tried to, shall we say, introduce those ideas to the mainstream who are just looking at this as kind of like a television show in the tradition of Lost. I mean, I always thought it was interesting that Lost, which is the progenitor of this form of television, episodic flashbacks, different characters, multiple time sequences. At any moment you can go 20 years back in a character's mind and live out a whole scene that impacts what's going on. That whole format was created by Abrams, J.J. Abrams, who, of course, is one of the hidden hands behind the event. The people that they put out front as actually running the event, the executive producer, et cetera, they're not really running it. They're only showcasing it. It's being run by other people behind the scenes, and again, it appears to be almost moment per moment the kind of disclosure which we were led to believe this administration was going to engage in, and which had a very sudden course correction because certain things took place that no one apparently counted on or basically expected in the way of, this word I use a lot, pushback. Now the question, of course, is where is the pushback coming from? Is it coming from just here on Earth? No, I think there is off-world pushback. I think some of the characters after World War II, you know, the ones with the N-word, they are very vigorously trying to keep this planet separated from the rest of civilization, i.e. the rest of the galaxy. Again, none of this would be taking place, from my point of view, unless you had a nodal point in the physics where real change can happen. You know, I've looked at lots of testimony where people who have either been abducted or who have had contact, this now goes back to the 40s and 50s, the so-called contactees, were all told that there would be certain time periods when the information that was being given to them would be shared with the rest of the world. Well, part of the rationale for that, of course, if you're looking at this from the hyperdimensional physics point of view, is that you can't do everything any old time. Certain things in terms of consciousness, and David correctly cites the Flynn effect as a stunning, scientifically reproducible, objective database that something about consciousness is changing for people all over this planet, regardless of their culture, regardless of their educational background, regardless of their sophistication. When you submit them to these tests, the tests come out that they are somehow more plugged in, they're more connected, they're more conscious at an HD level than their ancestors. Well, why aren't we living in the Renaissance, as some other scientists asked, some other psychiatrist? And the answer is that it doesn't refer to intelligence. This Flynn curve, I believe, refers to consciousness, the unconscious ability to plug into the matrix, to plug into the pattern and know the right answer without knowing how you got the right answer. And that makes more and more people look at television, and they get the meta messages coming through regardless of the spin and the words and the music and the pictures. They're to use another term from sci-fi, they're using a Heinlein grokking to get reality, and more of them are getting that reality they're being fed through television is not exactly the reality that exists. So now that brings us back to the event and other similar shows. I think they're part of this acculturation process. They're designed to get people who normally don't think outside the box. And obviously everyone here and all our audience are thinking outside the box, otherwise we wouldn't be here this afternoon. Hopefully somebody got their grandmother, their aunt, their sister, their friend, their live-in lover, their significant other of 30 years, whatever, who is not part of this conversation to tune in this afternoon and listen to this conversation, so when they leave the conversation, they'll look at television in a slightly different way. I see on a broad front, stretching from literally sea to shining sea, restricted only to this nation, this effort in all media to get people to wake up So I'm with David. I think the future is extraordinarily positive because there aren't enough controllers to put fingers and mandates and matrices in all the dikes, on all the channels, on all the world, and get everyone to think in lockstep. And that's the extraordinary thing. We're watching this disillusion from inside of a